The philosophy and the spirituality of oneness is the predominant spirituality. It kind of always has been. And two versions of it are, one, that the universe is an organic whole. It is a type of oneness, and some sort of disturbance has entered into the universe. And that disturbance is a contingent one. It didn't have to happen, and it can be removed. And so the movement is from wholeness and balance into disorder, into a kind of utopic new kind of order in the future, right? Whether that's in the next life or whether it's in this life. And so that's very, traditional confessional Christianity. There is a oneness, there is a fall, and there is redemption. And then the other primary spirituality of oneness is the idea that everything is one, and the idea of a disturbance in the one that we feel in our lives when things aren't working, whenever there's violence and destruction and all of these negative things, that is a type of illusion, a veil of illusion. And that what we have to do is to try to penetrate that veil of illusion and see the truth. The truth is that there is a oneness and a wholeness at the core of everything. So there's two types of spiritualities of the one. The universe is an organic whole in both of them. One, you can say there is an ontological break. There is a break at the kind of the core of reality. And the other is there is a type of illusion that is covering over the fact that everything is already one. And so depending on which spiritual path you choose or which guru you get, one guru will help you through certain practices to kind of get rid of the imbalance and get oneness, or will help you to see that everything already is one. And this is something that I want to, over the next 5 sessions, begin to question. I want to question it as being intellectually wrong, so I want to show that it's philosophically incorrect. I want to show that it is incorrect in terms of the nature of reality, in terms of the scientific method of what we discover about reality. But I also want to look at how it is damaging and dangerous for us as individuals, and it is damaging and dangerous for us in community with each other. That there are damaging things that come out of this. And then also, I want to argue and show that there is a way of reading Christianity that provides an answer to this problem, that provides a different way of being in the world, a different way than the way of oneness. And we're going to do all of that in 5 weeks. And the central figure for all this is Hegel. Actually, in Hegel's book, The Phenomenology of Spirit, he goes on this journey of exploring reason and basically uncovering deadlocks and contradictions in reality. And then he gets to Christianity, and for him Christianity has this profound insight built into its very heart. Now, we're not going to get to there for another 5 sessions, but we'll get there in the end, I promise you. So this first session is just an introduction. It's going to be an introduction to the concepts that we will be coming back to again and again in different ways. And I'll start with the 3 laws of thought. So basically within philosophy, there are 3 laws of thought that are attributed really to Aristotle, but really get articulated properly later on by people like Leibniz and others. And the 3 laws of thought are, 1, the law of non-contradiction. And the law of non-contradiction simply means that something can't both be and not be at the same time. It can't be true and not true at the same time, right? If something's true, it's not true. If it's not true, it's not true, right? I just made that more complicated than it needed to be. Basically, the law of non-contradiction is something can't both be true and not true at the same time. Very simple. Secondly, there is the law of excluded middle. And the law of excluded middle basically says that something is either true or not true. It can't have some sort of weird middle position, right? Either the Battle of Hastings happened in 1066 or it didn't. You can't have it in some sort of weird kind of superposition, right? And then the third law is the law of identity. And the law of identity is something is what it is, right? Now, the point of these three laws is at first, when you hear them, they're like so obvious, right? You almost go like, why would anybody have to express these? But in early philosophy, they were attempting to, discover some basic rules, axioms that you can build from. And the idea is that if these three laws aren't real, we wouldn't be able to think. There would be no thought, there would be no argument, nothing would make sense, everything would be utter chaos, right? And so it's not that you argue to these laws of thought, it's that these laws of thought must be presupposed in order to reason. They're already embedded in logic itself. They're embedded in reality itself, right? If they weren't, I mean, you can't really conceptualize what the world would look like if they weren't, right? Because everything is premised on the idea that things are what they are. Something can't be in a weird position between truth and falsehood, and something can't both be something and be its opposite at the same time, right? They're all kind of very interlinked, right? They're all very interconnected. Now then, the interesting thing is that Hegel, through careful analysis of reason, starts to question these three laws of thought. And that is crazy, right? That's madness at first, right? It's actually almost inconceivable how one could do that. And interestingly, this is the difference between analytic philosophy and continental philosophy. I'll come back to the difference a little bit later in this seminar, but basically analytic philosophy generally rejects Hegel, right? Going like Hegel is where philosophy goes off the rails, whereas continental philosophy has always had a very close relationship with Hegel. Even if it's a critical relationship with Hegel, it is one that takes him seriously. So analytic philosophers tend not to take Hegel seriously, continental philosophers do. Now, Hegel is most famous for, and by the way, we're talking philosophy, but we'll get beyond that in a second, but we'll do some basic philosophy. Hegel is best known as a philosopher of the dialectic. And he basically is best known for a type of thinking that makes progress. So how do we progress in thought? Well, for Hegel, basically, you start where you're at, right? And every given epoch has questions and issues that it faces, right? So, and Hegel, by the way, he basically goes through the history of entire human thought in order to see what the questions were at particular times. So you go back far enough and there's a question. And the question, might be the question of freedom. Is there freedom in the world? And so you put together a thesis, a position. And then in dialectics, what happens is you put a position forward and then someone else brings the antithesis, the opposite position. So freedom, well, determinism, the existence of God, the non-existence of God, the eternity of the universe, the temporality of the universe, right? So there's a thesis is put forward on any question whatsoever. Then someone comes along and gives an opposite position. And then through this debate, an honest, open, intelligent debate, a synthesis occurs, which is a type of way of bringing together the strengths of both positions into a higher unity, and then that becomes a thesis, and then that thesis generates an antithesis, and then through debate those discussions happen and create a synthesis that is kind of reconciles the two, and this process keeps on going. So the history of philosophy in this view is like that philosophy gradually solves problems, and as it solves problems it creates disciplines. So at first there was no disciplines, there was just philosophy, and then philosophy branches out into mathematics, might branch out into physics and chemistry, biology, then branches out into sociology, anthropology, psychology. And each of these can be seen as progressions of thought that have been part of this dialectic movement, right? And so Hegel is the philosopher of the thesis, the antithesis, and the synthesis. And this is kind of like an ongoing, never finished project. The only problem is that isn't Hegel, right? That is this terrible misreading of Hegel that has resulted from the fact that he's incredibly difficult to read and most people don't read him. And so he's become associated with a position that is basically the opposite of what he is. Now this happens to so many philosophers and thinkers and people, famous people in the world, is that as Todd McGowan says in the book, got it over there, Emancipation After Hegel, which is the book, by the way, this course is based on, right? If you want to do this course in a deep way, I really recommend you buy that book and you read it. This seminar that I'm giving is very closely connected with the introduction and the first chapter of that book. And in the very beginning of the book, Todd McGowan says that basically every great person of history, usually in the direct aftermath of their life, there is a great travesty, a great betrayal. And their name is associated with something that they really shouldn't be associated with. So Freud is associated with ego psychology. Nietzsche is associated with the Nazis. Who else? What else? I mean, Jesus is associated with empire, right? Whatever. These great thinkers have these weird kind of reversals where their name gets associated with something that really isn't part of them at all. And for Hegel, his name is associated with this progressive type of thinking: thesis, antithesis, synthesis, moving ever upwards in a kind of like, it's not like without its problems, it's not like an even keel thing. In fact, that's the thing about dialectics. It's not this very simple cause and effect. It's bouncing, right, to extremes, and these fights and these conflicts that eventually give rise to greater and greater insight. But the argument of someone like Todd McGowan and someone like Slavoj Žižek and others is that Hegel's dialectic is doing something much more radical. So what I want to do is I want to try to isolate what that is in this introductory seminar, and then we're going to look at how that pans out politically, religiously, and in terms of our own psychology. Yes, Hegel talks about how there is a thesis, some problem that arises in life. But what Hegel says is it's not that then someone comes in from the outside with the antithesis. It's that the position generates its own antithesis. There is this movement in which you put a position forward, and that position begins to crumble under its own weight as you look at it, as you analyze it, as you see it, and it generates another position. And there is a contradiction within the idea. And as you wrestle through that contradiction, you go deeper into it and you resolve it. But you resolve it by moving deeper into another contradiction. And actually what the history of thought is it is this movement from one contradiction to another, from a very superficial contradiction to more difficult ones and more difficult ones and more difficult ones, until you get to something that could be called an intractable contradiction. You keep moving. It's like you're not moving upwards in progress, you're moving deeper into something, deeper and deeper, and you're digging a well deeper. And eventually you get to the quantum level of thought. And at the quantum level of thought, the law of non-contradiction, excluded middle, and identity, these laws that seem so permanent, you glimpse that they're not. You glimpse that at the very quantum level of reason, these laws of non-contradiction basically don't hold. Now, you never see it directly. This is very, very important. You can never observe it. In fact, as soon as you speak it, as soon as you observe it, you take away the contradiction, you put it into language, you put it into understanding, and you domesticate it. And this is why Hegel very rarely says explicitly what he's doing. You have to follow the journey, you have to experience it for yourself, and it's a very long and difficult journey. You can't simply say life has contradiction built into its heart. You can say that, but when you say it, you're kind of like stepping outside of it and you're looking at it. And what Hegel is wanting to do is he is wanting to help you directly encounter that contradiction. Now, this is not dissimilar. I was talking to a physicist actually last week in the Netherlands. He came to a talk of mine and I was doing a talk on Hegel. And at the end, he says, I'm a physicist. And he says, this is interesting because in quantum mechanics, he says, we cannot grasp the contradiction or the deadlock in reality directly. As soon as you observe it, it basically, it crunches into a position, right? So you only ever indirectly get a sense of it. It's revealed always behind your back. And we know this with wave particle duality, for example, is that light is basically crunched into a position depending on how it is recorded. The recording device, the observation, is what helps define what it is. And so you never, as soon as you basically grasp light, you lose its contradiction. But there is a way, indirectly through experimentation, to glimpse the superpositioning. So remember when I said that, the Battle of Hastings, it either happened in 1066 or it didn't. There's no weird middle position, right? There's no weird place where it both did and didn't happen, right? Well, maybe when you heard me say that, if you know about physics a little bit, you might be thinking about Schrodinger's cat, because the thought experiment Schrodinger's cat is precisely a critique of the law of excluded middle, right? It's precisely this weird thought experiment in which, let me try and remember it. You have a cat, right? And the cat is in this box, and in the box there is a poisonous capsule. And the poisonous capsule is connected to a device that is recording the decay of a subatomic particle. And this subatomic particle, it might disintegrate or it might remain stable. And depending on what it does, it will have a reaction with this gas capsule. If it disintegrates, the gas capsule will release and Schrodinger's cat will die. And if the subatomic particle, I think, remains stable, hopefully I'm getting it right, look it up on Wikipedia to get it completely right, but if it doesn't decay, then the gas will not be released. And so from a common sense position, we go, well, the cat, we can't see inside the box. The cat is either alive or dead, right? We don't know. The cat's been in there for 24 hours. It's either alive or dead. But the weird thing is about the quantum world is that actually that subatomic particle is in superposition. It is neither stable or unstable. It has not taken a particular form. And so in a weird way, the cat is neither alive nor dead until you look at it. And as soon as you open the box and look at it, it's going to be alive or dead.